What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some of the battles on my way to hitting Legend rank in the Open Great League with a team that helped me to climb over 500 elo during the recent Go Battle weekend, with a Pokemon you might have forgotten even existed in Dragapult. But this is a Pokemon that honestly I've been looking for an excuse to run again, and with the recent release of Shadow Giratina, it gave me the perfect opportunity to bring it back in my signature ABB style team, with Incinerate user in the lead in Shadow Talonflame and Double Dragons in the back. Now the thought behind this team is pretty simple. You use Giratina to bait out any potential threats to Dragapult, and if they only have one hard answer, it should allow Dragapult to sweep in the endgame, as people just aren't expecting a second Pokemon like Giratina with a similar typing. Now I didn't record all of my battles, actually just the final 5 sets, so this won't necessarily be the best representation of how the team fares against the meta, but there is still enough variety for you guys to understand how this team should be played if you wanted to try it out for yourself. Now there are obviously some core breakers to the team, but I have been able to fight back against pretty much all of them aside from Carbink, which is of course a complete nightmare for both the Talonflame and the Giratina, and if you see one in the lead you might as well just concede the match there and then, but for everything else this team does still have play. With that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What has been your favorite Pokemon or favorite team to use to climb elo this season in the Go Battle League? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Shadow Talonflame into Shadow Jumpluff. So this is an amazing lead matchup for the Shadow Talonflame. The opponent's going to say swap into a Shadow Annihilate. Now I'm not swapping out straight away, recognizing I'm going to need to use a shield anyways if I come in with the Dragapult. So I'm actually going to farm up to very close to 100 energy, then swap into Dragapult, go for that Astonish farm down snipe, and they come back in with the Shadow Jumpluff. Now if the opponent went for an Aerial Ace there, it would not quite get the KO, so it allows me to reach a Shadow Ball, and the opponent recognizing of course that Jumpluff not going to be great into the Talonflame, so they do just no shield. But at this point we can come in with the Shadow Giratina. I'm going to wait out the switch clock, assuming the opponent has a Feraligatr in the back, and the reason why I played this matchup like I did is because I recognize Feraligatr is an issue for this team. It does beat all 3 Pokemon. However, since we're so far ahead on energy with that Shadow Talonflame, I'm able to reach back-to-back flies before they get to back-to-back Hydro Cannons. We get the KO. We can go for an Incinerate farm down, taking out the Shadow Jumpluff, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to opponent there. Into the next battle, we're going to see Talonflame in the mirror match here. I'm actually going to swap out straight away into my Shadow Giratina. Now, unfortunately, I'm not quite going to reach an Ancient Power before the opponent does reach their own charge move. So I fire off the Dragon Claw. They actually no shield, which is kind of surprising, but it doesn't really matter. That puts them into possibly farm down range for my Dragapult in the end game. Then I'm going to come in with their Steelix. So unfortunately, that fly, whilst it did not get the KO, puts me into perfect farm down range for these resisted Thunderfangs, and they're going to come out with a ton of loaded energy. But we do reach back-to-back Dragon Claws. That does get them fairly low, and no one charge move is going to get the KO from this range, so I no-shield the first move as they go for a Psychic Fangs. And I think I'm just going to no-shield once again. Unfortunately, they full send the crunch this time around, but they've got a Shadow Metang in the back, and unfortunately for them, Dragapult is just going to absolutely destroy this thing with the Astonish damage. I'm actually going to farm up to back-to-back Breaking Swipes here, looking to grab both shields from the opponent, which we are able to do, and Talonflame should still be in range where 3 Astonishes gets the full farm down before they do reach their own charge move. But at this point, I'm going to use my final shield here, shielding up the Side Shock. What is the opponent going to do here? The opponent comes back in with the Talonflame just to be fully farmed down. We come out with the Breaking Swipe loaded, and despite being resisted damage, Breaking Swipe takes out the Shadow Steelix, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG stop on there. Into next battle, you can see Shadow Talonflame into Azumarill. So, of course, this is a bit of an awkward core breaker to the team. However, pretty much every single Azumarill that I faced, I think actually every single one in the lead, did not respect the damage from a Shadow Brave Bird. So we're just going to go straight for it here, shielding up the Ice Beam. Brave Bird does huge damage. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite put them into range where I can Dragon Breath farm them down. However, the opponent does not farm up to a Play Rough, instead settling for the Ice Beam and then coming in with their own Shadow Talonflame. Now this one I'm going to throw just before they do reach their first charge move. The opponent cannot commit to a full farm down there. otherwise I will reach a second Dragon Claw. The opponent fires off the Flame Charge. We can come in with that Dragapult, and the opponent will reach another Charge Move, and even if they go for a Flame Charge here, that's going to do huge damage, so I do use my final shield, but let's see what Dragapult can do. We are ahead on energy, and the opponent's going to come in with a Morpeko, so we do have to watch out for a potential catch from the opponent, but remember, Talonflame has a Charge Move loaded, and I'm able to outpace them to the Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe is going to grab the final shield here. I make sure the opponent does not throw a Charge Move there as I try and swap out into Talonflame. I force him to throw energy, and whilst I have a move loaded, I actually don't need to throw it. Instead, I can just come in, Incinerate, farm down with the Shallow Talonflame, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG swap on there into the next battle, another Core Breaker to the team, but we can swap into our Giratina here, and we are going to no-shield the first Charge Move, just in case the opponent does boost with a Night Slash, and now they swap into a Shadow Jumpluff. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to flip this match up here, but the opponent is going to take big damage from the Ancient Power, and that has potentially put them into range where a single Incinerate will get the full farm down. So, of course, going to wait out the Switch Clock here, come back in with the Talonflame, and a single Incinerate does get that KO. We now swap into Dragapult, and I'm definitely going to have to shield this time around, as Night Slash is going to do a lot more damage up against the very classy Dragapult. Now, they reveal their final Pokemon to be a Clodsire. Not really ideal for me, but I do resist the fast move damage, and I've now just debuffed them with a Breaking Swipe. So, I should live an Earthquake, not super comfortably, but we do live it, and we farm up to back-to-back Breaking Swipes here. First one is going to not be shielded, and it unfortunately does not get the KO, but I can still KO here with the next Breaking Swipe, and they've still got 2 shields, but it kind of doesn't matter at this point. The opponent farming up to back-to-back charge moves has put themselves into a range where possibly even a resistant Astonish gets the farm down there. I'm able to tank a Water Shuriken, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG swap on there into the next battle. You can see a Shadow Galarian Weezing in the lead. So, definitely where we want to see it for this team. Of course, I don't know the charge moves. If they've got Sludge and Overheat, then actually we do resist the charge moves on both my Pokemon in the back. However, the opponent's going to swap out into Feraligatr. And once again, Feraligatr, a problematic Pokemon. However, with that huge energy advantage, I'm able to grab a shield there with the Fly and now swap into my Giratina. Now, this point, I'm going to use one shield. They did bait with a Hydro Cannon. We're going to go for a Dragon Claw here, and the opponent will still need to go and full send an Ice Beam, which the opponent does do. But now we put them into range where we can come in with the Dragapult and get a full Astonish farm down. Now, the fact the opponent does not come back in with Galarian Weezing probably implies that they do not have Brutal Swing, which means Shadow Ball does big damage. I'm going to swap into my Shadow Talonflame there, able to get the Incinerate through. Actually, never mind, they do have Brutal Swing, but it doesn't matter, as we can fire off that Fly straight away. Fly gets the KO there, and the opponent is forced to full send a Rock Slide, but it doesn't matter. Dragapult still healthy enough to live a single Mud Slap, get the Astonish farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GT swap on there into the next battle. We're going to see a Shadow Kanto Marowak in the lead this time around. So, the way we play this out here is we are not going to throw straight away. We're going to wait for the opponent to throw here if they do want to throw on slightly bad timing. It's not the worst timing for them. They only give away 2 free turns, but here they're going to fire off the next move straight away. This is just going to be a resisted Bone Club, which still does get us very low, but I'm going to save 100 energy, swap into Shadow Giratina, and I'm met with the Dene. Now, I don't expect them to shield this, which is kind of ideal for me because I need that damage before they can start boosting up their defense, potentially. Either way, I'm going to no-shield. They full send a Play Rough, and unfortunately, they do overfarm quite a bit, so they will reach another Play Rough up against my Dragapult. But remember, Talonflame has so much loaded energy, so I'm going to use my final shield here. We're now down 2 shields, but I've got energy across the entire team, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Serperior. That's going to be game over. There's no point in baiting. Shadow Ball does huge damage here. I'm going to wait for the opponent to throw a charge move, but it doesn't matter. At this point, I can tank a Frenzy Plant here. Not super comfortably, but we do tank it. We can snipe with the Incinerate damage, and the opponent recognizing there's nothing they can do, so they just concede the match. So, GG's top on there. Into the next battle, we see another Greninja in the lead. So we're say swapping into Shadow Giratina, and once again, going to be met instantly with a Night Slash. So, going to no-shield the first move once again. This time, the opponent's actually choosing to stay in with Greninja. So I'm going to fire off that Dragon Claw straight away. Dragon Claw is going to be shielded, but the opponent does overfarm massively. So at this point, of course, I'm going to have to let the Giratina go down. The fact they don't swap out here means that potentially this is their only answer to a Ghost and Dragon-type Pokemon, in which case, I can shield once here, and despite being resisted again, Astonish looks like I will get the full farm down. Coming out with the Breaking Swipe loaded, but let's see, the opponent's going to come in with a Shadow Jump off, so not ideal. I recognize instantly that, of course, they're probably going to see the Shadow Talonflame in the back and save their shield for that. So unfortunately, we don't grab the shield there, but we deal huge damage with a Shadow Ball, but they do bank the energy, and Brave Bird does massive damage. But unfortunately, they barely hang on with 1 HP and a Dream. Stone Edge gets the KO there. And that is unfortunately likely going to be game over. What I could have done is fired off the Breaking Swipe there, but it doesn't really matter at this point, as Aerial Ace going to grab my shield, and from this range, another Aerial Ace will get the KO. Of course, if I threw the Breaking Swipe and got the debuff, maybe I could have survived, but I think they would have just still got a Fairy Wind farm down anyways. But either way, GG's to that trainer. Into the next battle, I'm going to see Golisopod in the lead. So, of course, they're on Shadow Claw, so not that ideal for my backline, but both the charge moves will be resisted. So what we're going to do, fire off a Fly, and then I will swap into Giratina. We got them very low with the Incinerate damage. The opponent's going to come in with a Clodsire, and this is a fine matchup for me. Unfortunately, in the zero shield scenario, if they've got Stone Edge, I think this will be a narrow loss here, but either way, I don't plan on shielding the Giratina. Earthquake does big damage, and if they're on Sludge, actually, we will be able to tank that relatively comfortably, but we go for Dragon Claw, we get them very low, we force them to throw a charge move here, and again, I am going to no shield, and it is the Stone Edge, but we put them into range where we can Incinerate, farm them down. The opponent's actually going to come in with their final Pokemon, a Credilli now. Credilli, if all shields were down, would be very problematic for the Shadow Talonflame, but we do still have a shield, which means I can shield this up here, and even though I'm going to be debuffed, Shadow Talonflame does not care. We're going straight for the Brave Bird. Brave Bird gets the KO. We can swap straight away into Dragapult. Of course, they do have a Golisopod, which does have loaded energy, but they're only going to reach 1 charge move, and it is going to be resisted. They go for X-Scissor for some reason. Arcjet would be slightly better, but either way, it doesn't matter. I'm able to tank it, go for the farm down, and I'm able to take that game. Into the next battle, we see Galarian Moltres in the lead. So this is a matchup where we will have to play this out, and the opponent is going to outpace me just barely to that first fly. I'm going to shield the first move here, and then I will actually outpace them to 2 more flies here. So we're going to stay in this matchup. Going to be wary of a potential catch attempt from the opponent, but we can go for the next fly potentially. What I could have done is fired off a Brave Bird here, expecting a double shield and not allowing that much farm down, but either way, it doesn't really matter. We can come in with the Giratina. Very unlikely that they're running Payback, so I will no shield. The opponent actually just settles for a fly before getting fully Dragon Breath farmed down. Now they're going to come in with a Kanto Mara. We're going to go for a Dragon Claw straight away, then swap into the Dragapult, and the opponent is going to fire off the charge move, but we're now ahead on energy. I'm going to shield this as they fire off the Bone Club, but their final Pokemon is a Credilli. Now I've got 2 options. I could go for back-to-back Breaking Swipes, but instead I'm full sending a Shadow Ball, dealing big damage, forcing them to throw straight away, and what this means is we can come in with the Giratina, go for the Dragon Breath farm down as we resist the acid damage, but unfortunately we do just barely get farmed down there by the Mud Slap as we reach the charge move. What I could have potentially done there is actually when they came in with that Marowak, initially I only went for 1 Dragon Breath. If I went for 2, I would have guaranteed that match out there, but unfortunately it is what it is. Either way, into the next battle, we see a Jellicent in the lead. Gonna say swap into Giratina, actually grabbing a shield advantage, and then they bait with a Surf there, which is definitely fine with me. Again, this is just going to be another Surf, so I will no shield this before they swap into a Credilli. Now this Credilli, I believe, is running Bullet Seed rather than Acid, so they're actually going to get a huge farm down here, as Bullet Seed is going to be resisted by the Giratina, and it just doesn't do much damage, but we do get them very low. So at this point, I'm going to come in with the Dragapult, recognizing I can tank a single Rock Tomb relatively comfortably here. So I'm going to no-shield the first move. They will reach back-to-back charge moves here as they fire off that first Rock Tomb, debuffing my attack, which means the Astonish damage doesn't quite get the KO, but that's fine with me. I can shield there. I'm now double debuff, so I will look to swap out straight away into Talonflame. And then final Pokemon going to be a Shadow Primeape, and that is fine with me. We can no-shield the first charge move here. As the opponent fires off that Rage Fist, the opponent is going to be swapping back into Jellicent. I'm going to farm up too close to back-to-back charge moves here. Fire off the Fly. Fly gets the KO. They come back in just to be Incinerate farmed down by the Shadow Talonflame, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG Turbo there into next battle, Nightmare lead and a Core Breaker once again. We swap into Shadow Giratina, and if they've got Crunch, then fair play. I'm going to no-shield anyways. And unfortunately, it is a crunch. So Giratina goes down instantly. We are really not looking to be in a good position. But we're going to come in with the Dragapult. Of course, I'm going to have to now shield this. Even if it's a Hydro Cannon, it would do quite a lot of damage anyways. But we shield up the crunch. They do not get the debuff, but they've got a Ferrothorn in the back. So of course, they must have a decent answer to Fire types as their other Pokemon. We're going to swap into Talonflame. And there it is. Unfortunately, a Clodsire. Last time we did full send a Brave Bird, and it just barely didn't quite get the KO. They are going to be on Stone Edge, so it doesn't even matter if I debuff my defense here. We can go for a Fly. Probably just going to go for back-to-back Flies here. And never mind, I'm actually going to full send a Brave Bird here. Doesn't really make a difference. Brave Bird is going to be shielded, and that Ferrothorn does have a charge move loaded. So what I need to do is come out with back-to-back charge moves here. But even then, I'm not certain if a Breaking Swipe would take out the Ferrothorn. But at this point, it doesn't really matter, as the opponent able to outpace me to the Stone Edge before I get to back-to-back moves. And unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG Stop in there into the next battle, and we see a Wigglytuff in the lead. Definitely where we want to see it. The opponent's going to say swap into a Shadow Kanto Marowak, so probably going to be Wigglytuff double Mud Slap, in which case we're going to grab the shield from the opponent and then swap into our Giratina. Now, I will need to shield one charge move, as back-to-back Bone Clubs will do enough damage where probably one more Mud Slap gets the farm down. So shield the first one there. They fire off the second one. We can go for the Dragon Breath farm down, and we're going to come out with an Ancient Power loaded, which isn't going to do much damage, but it will add up, and it will potentially put them into Incinerate farm down range. So at this point, we're going to wait out our Switch Shot, come back in with that Shadow Talonflame, and the opponent is going to look to try and throw on CMP, but that's a huge mistake as we get the full Incinerate through. They go for an Icy Wind, they debuff my attack, but it doesn't matter. Shadow Talonflame is still going to hit incredibly hard. It is a second Mud Slapper. It's going to be Shadow Golurk. I'm going straight for the Brave Bird. Brave Bird gets the one shot, and now despite the fact that we're dealing double resisted damage, we're taking huge damage from the charms. I do just barely reach a Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe gets the KO there, and Dragapult is a Wigglytuff counter confirmed. So, GG Top in there into the next battle. We're going to see a Shadow Kanto Marowak in the lead once again. So once again, going to play out this lead matchup here. In the higher elo ranges, the opponents would actually go for the charge move here and then go for another Bone Club straight away. In which case, I'm going to shield the first one as they do bait. And again, they do fire off the next charge move straight away. So once again, we're going to bank 100 energy, then swap into my Shadow Giratina. And we're baiting out a Jellicent. Not the worst thing ever. I'm going to throw a Dragon Claw just before they do reach a potential Shadow Ball. Dragon Claw going to be no shielded. Well, that's okay with me. They overfarm by a single Hex, which means Shadow Ball gonna get the KO there, but they will not reach another Shadow Ball into my Dragapult. And remember, we do still have 100 energy on our Talonflame. So at this point, I'm gonna no-shield this. Surf, even resisted damage, does get us into the yellow health range, but let's see what their final Pokemon is. The opponent comes in with a Primeape, and suddenly things are looking much better for me. We go for Breaking Swipe. The opponent tries to catch on the Talonflame there, as expecting I'm going to swap out straight away to Snipe with a Fly, but it doesn't work out, and as a result, the opponent forced to no-shield there as we had back-to-back charge moves, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG Stop in there into the next battle. We see another Core Breaker to the team in the form of the Dene. At this point, we are going to stay in this matchup just because Incinerates are dealing big damage. We're going to shield up a Parabolic Charge there. Now going to fire off a Fly, and despite the fact this is resisted damage, it could be a Flame Charge. The opponent is going to end up shielding, and now we swap into our Dragapult. The opponent doesn't throw on the best timing, giving a full Astonish in for free. The opponent fires off the Play Rough before swapping into a Serperior. Now, of course, Serperior are going to have an awful time up against the Talonflame, which is why they're bringing it in here. I did go for a Breaking Swipe fishing for a debuff. We do not get the debuff, which is unfortunate, but I can go for another Breaking Swipe. And I'm actually going to go for a slight undercharge, getting one more Astonish in as we get the full farm down. Now the opponent's going to come in with their final Pokemon, a Shadow Annihilate, and this is going to be game over. We can go for Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe is going to get the debuff this time around. We can come in with the Shadow Giratina. There's nothing they can do, and so they just concede the match. Into the next battle, you can see Credilli in the lead. So, of course, this shouldn't be a good matchup for us, but Talonflame just hits so hard, even if they go for the debuff here, which of course they're gonna do. With that Rock Tomb, I can still farm up to 100 energy and then just full send a Brave Bird. I believe since some debuff, Fly probably doesn't quite get the KO, but Brave Bird certainly does. They come in with their own Talonflame, so we're gonna swap out once again into our Shadow Giratina, fire off that Dragon Claw straight away. Dragon Claw is going to be no shielded, and if the opponent wants to, they can full send a Brave Bird to get the KO, but that's fine with me. Giratina has put them into range where we can, of course, farm them down, so it just depends what their final Pokemon is. Remember, we've got a Fly loaded on our Shadow Talonflame. The opponent comes in with a Shadow Kanto Marak, but because they swap out there, it does take one turn. I'm one turn ahead. We go for Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe gets the debuff. We can now fire off a second Breaking Swipe. This should grab the final shield, and now we're going to snipe with the Shadow Talonflame. With that Fly, we already had banked. Fly gets the KO there. One more Incinerate takes out their Talonflame, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, you can see a Shadow Pidgeot in the lead. So, a bit of an awkward matchup here. I can't really afford to swap out just because if the opponent does swap out and win switch advantage, I'm going to have Pidgeot aligned to my Dragapult. So, I kind of just have to hope that the opponent does not have a Fairy-type Pokemon in the back. We're going to go straight for Fly. Fly does grab a shield advantage, and now we're going to come in with our Shadow Giratina. Now, we do have two options here. I can, of course, tank an Air Cutter relatively comfortably, but I don't know what they've got in the back here, and I'm going to shield here just so that I do have a bit of HP on the Giratina in case they've got a fairly bulky Pokemon like a Gastrodon, for example, where I can have a shield advantage, but it doesn't really matter as I can't shield the Mud Slaps. So at this point, we're going to fire off back-to-back Dragon Claws here. Dragon Claw number 2, going to be no shielded, and the opponent has to full send an Earth Power. So at this point, I'm happy to let the move go through. Earth Power gets the KO, but unfortunately for the opponent, they've got Shadow Annihilate in the back. I can just commit to a full Astonish farm down, and that's going to be game over. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we see Magcargo in the lead. Obviously, not a great lead matchup, but we're going to say swap into Shadow Giratina, and I'm going to go straight for a Dragon Claw. Now, of course, the opponent can go for a Rock Tomb debuff in my attack, so they do shield the first charge move, and now they fire off that Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb going to do decent damage there. They then swap into a Shadow Dusknoir, and they are going to go for an Astonish farm down, but not before we do reach a Dragon Claw, getting them into the yellow health range. At this point, we're going to come in with that Shadow Talonflame, and we're just going to look to deal as much damage as possible with the Incinerates. Now, they should be at back-to-back charge moves here, or sorry, one away from back-to-back. So we come in with the Dragapult, we get that snipe with the Astonish damage, and honestly, with the damage we've already dealt to that Magcargo, they are potentially in range where a Brave Bird might even get the KO. But at this point, I'm waiting for the opponent to throw here. The opponent's going to go for a double-resisted Superpower for some reason. This is just going to be another Superpower. I do not mind that whatsoever. Superpower is going to get us fairly low, but not in range where an Incinerate gets the KO. At this point, I recognize the opponent probably going to go for an Overfarm, which means I can now come in with the Talonflame, reach a Fly. Fly is going to grab the final shield here. They should still be one away from the next charge move, so Rock Tomb gets the KO. We're at back-to-back Breaking Swipes now after going for one Astonish. Breaking Swipe takes out Magcargo. One more Breaking Swipe will, of course, take out the Chestnut from this range, and Dragapult once again going for that sweep, taking out the Chestnut, and I'm able to take that game. Now going into the final battle of this video, leading into a regular Jumpluff. So the opponent is likely going to swap out. They swap into Shadow Drapion. Surprisingly, I didn't see too many Shadow Drapion in that space swap position, but what I would do is go for one extra Incinerate, fire off the Fly, and then swap into my Giratina, and up against a Shadow Drapion, whilst it's not very comfortable, we can tank a Crunch, and from this range, I can now commit to a full Dragon Breath farm down. So at this point, I'm not certain if I can live and reach an Ancient Power. Now, actually, never mind. What am I talking about? I'm thinking of a different game here. But either way, Ancient Power, gotta be no shielded, but this is a non-shadow, so it doesn't do much damage here. And Acrobatics is still going to do quite a lot of damage to my Talonflame. So at this point, I think I might end up shielding here. So we do shield, they bait with the aerial ace, which is unfortunate, and their final Pokemon going to be a Morpeko, so quite difficult to deal with, but we can fire off the fly, go for one more Incinerate, and this is not going to be an Aura Wheel, it's just a Psychic Fangs, which I can now tank, but it means they will unfortunately just barely reach another Psychic Fangs here, and again, not going to KO, doesn't do much damage, but it does now mean that a single aerial ace will get the KO, and since they did bait earlier with that aerial ace, the opponent can now just simply farm up to back-to-back charge moves. I fire off the Breaking Swipe, debuffing their attack, doesn't matter, my defense is dropped. The opponent does farm up to back-to-back moves there. Aerial Ace takes out the Dragapult, and unfortunately from this range, Aerial Ace also going to be taking out the Shadow Talonflame, and unfortunately we do lose that final game, but it doesn't matter. I believe in my final set, I did go 4-1, and as you're going to see, we do now hit Legend rank in the Open Great League. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated, and with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.